guys, welcome back to my channel. Cassie here, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you my favourite books of 2017. I don't know why I'm saying it's like so dramatically, but that's just the way I'm going to go with it, because these are the books that I loved the most in 2017. These are the books that I could not put down the moment I opened it, from page 1 to page whatever. I love them, I love the characters, I love the writing, I love the world, I love just everything about these books. 2017 was such an amazing reading year. I've never read as many books in my life in the space of 1 year. That was only because of BookTube and discovering all of these new books that I would never have known about in a million years, because, you know, I'm, that deprived, and we don't have a bookstore in the town anymore. So I never would have known about them. All of these, bar one, are books that I never ever would have encountered had it not been for BookTube and knowing all about these wonderful books. And I'm so happy that they're in my life, because they're the best things that probably happened to me this year. I'm so excited to share them all with you. These are in no particular order, because I don't ask me to try to put them in any kind of order, because it would have been impossible. There would have been tears, there would have been blood, there would have been missing teeth, because it would have been an all-out battle for that #1 spot. Too dramatic? Probably. But we're just gonna go with it, and we're gonna segue right on into the first book that I loved in 2017, and that is Born with Teeth by Kate Mulgrew. I know it's a cheat, because this book was a reread, but it was a reread, and it was the first time listening to the audiobook version of it, which I would highly recommend, because it is so awesome, and it's read by Kate Mulgrew herself, and her voice is just everything, and she could just read the telephone book to me and I would be ridiculously happy. If you don't know, Born with Teeth is the memoir written by Kate Mulgrew, most famously known for being Mary Ryan in Ryan's Hope, Captain Catherine Janeway in Star Trek Voyager, and Galina Reznikov, aka Red, in Orange is the New Black. And I've been a fan of hers since I was 11 years old. When this book came out in 2015, I believe it was, yeah, I read it. I loved it, and so I just figured, you know what, I'm going to reread it this year as to mark the 50th book that I would read in 2017, because I set a goal to read 50 books through Goodreads for 2017, and this was the 50th one. It just reminded me of all the reasons why I love this woman. She is articulate, she is witty. Everything that happened to her in this book was just either heartbreaking, hilarious, or just made me fall in love with her all the more. And of course it was going to be one of my favorite reads of the year, because it's Kate Mulgrew. I also loved Geek Arella by Ashley Poston. I was not expecting to love this book as much as I did, because Geek Arella is basically Cinderella, but Cinderella is a geek. She's a fangirl, she's a cosplayer, she loves this television show called Starfield that is remarkably like Star Trek meets Stargate meets Galaxy Quest. It's a Cinderella retelling. She has an evil stepmother who reminds me a lot of Kristen Chenoweth, mixed with Bernadette Peters, and she has step sisters who are twins, and they are just evil. And Danielle L. Geek Arella is a massive fan of this show, and she enters this cosplay competition of this convention that her late father was the head of. He set up this convention because, you know, he was a nerd too. Her mom and dad were nerds. So she decides to enter this cosplay because the prize is money and the opportunity to go to California to watch the movie premiere of the remake that they are telling of Starfield. It literally was Star Trek. How I felt with Star Trek when it was being made into the new movies by J.J. Abrams. This was literally how I felt, because I grew up watching Voyager and then Next Generation and then Deep Space Nine, because I didn't watch them in order. When the new movies came out with Chris Pine, Zoe Saldana, Zachary Quinto, I felt literally how Elle felt in this book. I was like, okay, I'm not so sure about that, but I'm gonna give it a chance. Except she has a blog and she blogs all about it, and then she accidentally starts talking to the main star of this new reboot. They don't know who the other is. He doesn't know that she's a scathing blogger, and she doesn't know that this is the dude that she's been writing crap about. I absolutely fell in love with this book. I just devoured this book. I absolutely loved it. I loved the writing. I laughed so much. I felt absolutely represented in this, because I'm a fangirl, and Ashley Poston was exceptionally good at articulating what fandom is, what being a fangirl is, what being a fanboy is, what being just part of a fandom is. And this is what really, really made me love this book so much, and it was one of my favorite reads of the year. Another book I didn't expect to love as much as I did was The Disappearances by Emily Bain Murphy. I heard about this book from Reagan at Peruse Project, and I just picked it up one day when I was in Waterstones, and I absolutely fell in love with this book. This follows a town in America where every 7 years something disappears, and I'm not talking about something trivial, you know, like a car, like a pen, or even a person. Things disappear, like reflections, tastes, smells, sounds, they all disappear. It's linked to this girl Ayla and her brother Miles, who are sent there when her father goes off to war. Their mother has died, and there's this rumor going around that it was her mother's fault because she like coincidentally left when all of this stuff was happening. I loved it so much. I loved the setting, I loved the story. I didn't know how it was going to work with all of these disappearances happening. I didn't know how like Emily Bain Murphy could like make that so appealing and so vivid and just made me care about it so much. I was as excited about the people in this book to figure out what disappeared next. I was like, oh, what's going to disappear? What's going to disappear? The thing was that the people weren't being like, oh, woe is me. They kind of had fun with it, like trying to speculate what would go next, and they kind of celebrated it every 7 years. Even what actually happened, what the actual cause was, I was like, whoa, I was not expecting that at all. I loved it. It just reminded me so much of Sanctuary. A lot of the books that I read in 2017 reminded me of Sanctuary, and I was living for it. I loved it. This book was just brilliant. I love the writing style. I even love the font that it's told in. Weirdly, I'm a font nerd like that. I love it when books are written in like a strange font and not just Times New Roman. I love the characters. I just loved everything about this. I'm like Stephanie Garber. I adored this book. This was another historical fiction set in World War II, just like The Disappearances, but this one was a lot more hard-hitting. This follows two characters, one called Verity and the other called Maddie. The first half of the book is told from Verity's perspective, and the other half is told from Maddie's. They are both women in like the auxiliary army in England. Verity is a translator, Maddie is a pilot. They're doing their part for the war effort, but their plane is shot down over Nazi-occupied France. Verity is imprisoned and Maddie is left wounded. Oh my goodness. When I started reading this book, I was like, what the hell is going on here? I was ridiculously confused. And it doesn't take a lot to confuse me, to be perfectly honest, but this book did confuse me. And I'm so glad I went back and started it again, because oh my goodness, I absolutely loved this. And I love that it confused me so much. I loved that it was confusing because it made sense. It makes sense towards the end of Verity's part, and you're like, oh, I see, I get it now. And that is what made me love it more. When I got to Maddie's perspective and what happens through her journey, I was completely shocked by it. I couldn't believe what actually happened, and I am like, I felt personally victimized by Elizabeth Wein because of that. This book actually made me cry. I have never ever cried at a book, welled up at a book. Never. My mother has cried at books. I have never cried at a book. This book made me well up. It made me want to cry. What? So of course it was going to be one of the best reads of 2017. I loved Elizabeth Wein's writing style. She's unapologetic of what she does in this book. Absolutely unapologetic. And that is what makes me excited to read Rose Under Fire and White Dove, Black Raven, I think is another one. I would highly recommend this to anybody. I will say, give it a chance. It will confuse the living crap out of you, but give it a chance. It is so good. Next up is Invictus by Ryan Groden. Oh my goodness, guys. This book is DC's Legends of Tomorrow in a book. This is basically what I would have wanted from that series had it not gone to Crapsville and just like stomped over my little shipper heart. Invictus follows this character called Faraway. He is a time traveler. In this century, time travel is an occupation. Faraway, he was born outside of time. You know, the TARDIS, when it goes from time to time, it's in like kind of like a limbo where there's no time-space continuum. There, he was born there. But when he fails his time travel exam, he's recruited by the time black market to go to places in time and steal something of value. For example, if a building was being destroyed by, say, Nazis, and everything in that building was lost forever, Faraway would go in like minutes before it was destroyed, take that item and hoof it. Nobody would miss it because they thought it was going to be destroyed. So he hops through time, going to these different places in time and stealing artifacts. But they also encounter this other time traveler called Elliot, who has a mystery all of her own. I adored this. I could not put this book down, not even for an instant. I felt like I was going through withdrawal symptoms if I put this book down and I was not reading it. From the beginning to the end, I was captivated. Ryan Groudon has this wit and sarcasm that these characters have that I identified spiritually with. I love these characters. I loved it. 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 This, just saying that just put me on it. Just stopped me going on a tangent of like saying how much I loved it again. The characters, the writing, everything, the setting. It just reminded me of Legends of Tomorrow. The ship reminded me of Firefly. The whole time space continuum thing reminded me of Doctor Who. Amazing. And I guess this little gap here tells you what book I'm going to share next. Strange a Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I know everybody and their mother has been talking about this book all year. And I know some people didn't like it. That's fine. That's great. I don't mind. Strange a Dreamer for me was the gateway drug into all of this. All of these books. This was the gateway drug. I bought this book in the airport at Belfast when I was going to Portugal, not knowing really anything about it. I had heard Haley and Bookland mention it, just mention it in a book haul, and I just read the back of it. Picked it up at the airport and I started reading it after I finished the book that I brought with me. I did not put this sucker down. Anytime we went to anywhere in Portugal, I was like, but I want to stay in and read. I loved it that much. It is a slow burner, I will tell you that. It's a slow burner. But when you're in a villa in Portugal and you've got nowhere to go, slow burners are actually kind of good. But it was the writing style that really got me into this book. Laini Taylor has such a way with writing that I've actually got the Daughter of Smoke and Bones series sitting, the entire series sitting and waiting to go. I just haven't picked it up yet. I know, I'm awful. This book was just everything for me because I didn't know like places like this existed in books. I didn't know like books like this could exist. And then that got me into watching more booktube videos, and so that made me buy more and more and more and more books. So it's your fault! I'm just kidding, I love you. Characters in this really blew me away. The imagery of this book blew my mind. I couldn't get over the world in this book. I couldn't get over like what Laini Taylor had created. It was just phenomenal, and I cannot wait for Muse of Nightmares, which is the next book in the series. And I hope that it is just as gorgeous as this, because look, it's gold and blue, two of my favorite colors. It's just... Moving on to Daylight. We're almost there. I have one book and one series to show you, and they're all by the same person, and I have fallen absolutely head over heels in love with, and that is Leigh Bardugo. So the first book that I am going to show you is Wonder Woman Warbringer. This is part of the DC Icons series, and Leigh Bardugo did the first book, which is Wonder Woman. Warbringer is the first one in this series. I absolutely adore it because it came out right after the Wonder Woman movie with Gal Gadot. This is nothing like the movie. In fact, this is kind of set as if the movie never actually happened, because in modern day, right now, even though Themyscira is kind of outside of time, this is kind of set in modern day, and Diana is trying to prove herself to her sisters on Themyscira because she hasn't earned the right to be there. She was born there. Everybody else has earned the right to be there, and so they don't see Diana as an equal, and so she's trying to prove to herself, her sisters, and her mother Hippolyta that she belongs there. Oh my goodness, this book was everything. I love Leigh Bardugo's writing. I love everything in this book. And the thing with Leigh Bardugo's writing is she's the only author that I encountered in 2017 that I can read and shut out everything. Sometimes when I'm reading I need complete silence, or I need, you know, like classical music. I was able to sit in a room with people gabbing away, and I was able to lose myself in this book. Everything about this book was just phenomenal, and the fact that it is signed as well, I am very happy. I haven't seen this version around booktube a lot. I think this is like the UK Waterstones edition, I think. It made me love Diana so much. Like, DC's not my favourite. I do love a lot of things in the DC universe. This just made me love Wonder Woman so so much. This is a complete standalone from the DC Cinematic Universe. I love it. And the last favourite read of 2017 is actually a trilogy, and that is the Grisha Trilogy by Leigh Bardugo, as I said. So this includes Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and lastly, Ruin and Rising. Like most of the books on this list, I encountered this from BookTube, and I'm so glad that I did. I absolutely loved this series. It follows this character called Alina, who grew up as an orphan with her best friend Mal, and like everybody in Ravka, they're tested when they're children to see if they have Grisha abilities. They test negative, but it turns out that Alina was actually a Grisha all along, and she's actually a Lightbringer. I blasted through Shadow and Bone, and it's very much a setup for the rest of the series, but at the same time a lot happens in it. It's not one of these ones I should say, oh, this happens, and then we'll go from there. There's quite a lot that actually happens in this for Alina to manage her abilities, to really control her abilities, and to come to terms with her abilities. In Shadow and Bone, it introduces you to the Darkling, who is probably one of the most sensual characters and one of the most manipulative characters I have probably ever encountered and loved. Leigh Bardugo just writes characters that you love to hate and that you hate to hate because you don't want to hate him because you love him so much. But I absolutely love this, and then when I went on to Siege and Storm and Ruin and Rising, it introduced me to one of my favorite characters of all time, Nikolai Lantsov. Nikolai is... how can I describe Nikolai? Nikolai is perfect. Nikolai punched me in the face. It was awesome. Nikolai's face is insured for $100,000. I loved him in Siege and Storm. He is the reason why I got through Siege and Storm so quickly, because he is so funny, he is so witty, he is such a dry wit that I just appreciated. And I think my favourite out of them all was Ruin and Rising, purely for what happens in it, for the places that they go in this, and for what actually happens in this. Oh my god, was this good. I couldn't believe half of the things that Alina was doing, what happened to this gang of people, and basically how they defeated the villain. I'm like still getting over this, and just holding it up brings back all those memories. And oh yes, this book was amazing. This series is phenomenal. I loved it, and I can't wait for Nikolai's series to come out. He's getting his own book. I am so excited for that, because as I said, he's my favorite character in this. Alina is a very close second. I'm so glad that I read this series this year. I'm so glad that I encountered Leigh Bardugo's writing. I just love this series so much, and I also want the new covers of these, because as much as these are aesthetically pleasing, the other ones. So there you have it, guys. Those are all of my favorite books of 2017. They give me the feels, they give me the chills, they made me want to absolutely dive in head first into these books and hope that I just like land in these worlds. I loved everything about them, the writing, characters, the worlds, just everything. These are my favorites, and let me know what your favorites are in the comments down below. What did you think of any of these books? If you read them in 2017, or if they are on your TBR for 2018, let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more videos from me, and I will see you guys soon. Bye! I just hit myself.